Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for viewing. I am Devette, Christian numerologist and relationship coach. I help individuals build relationships with the people in their life, whether it's their family, their spouse, even people they work with. And in doing that as a spiritual entrepreneur, I thought it would be an amazing idea to interview and spotlight some really cool, amazing people that are really doing wonderful things in the world, that have come through a journey that they want to share with others, and that you hopefully will be inspired by. I am totally stoked and I cannot wait to dive in with Mikael today. I cannot wait to hear about the healing aspect that you bring to the table, and everything else that you want to share. But Mikael, if you want to introduce yourself, tell us more about you, what got you started, and all that good stuff.
Sure. Well, my name is Mikael Luman. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I mean, really, I'll just jump into my healing experience, and then we'll just go from there. So, in 2015, I had just had a back surgery. I'd been in pain for 2.5 years. I re-herniated the same disc 3 weeks later, only to find out I had torn labrums and bilateral impingements in both hips. The hip surgeon wanted me to do my back again first, and then take 6 months to a year to get into shape before he would do my hips. I was going through a divorce. In a moment of feeling as if I was out of options, I went out of town. I hiked up to a river that I'd gone to as a kid. I put all my pain in a rock, threw the rock in the river, and had an instant miraculous healing experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
one
amazing.
moment I had all these things, the next moment I didn't. One moment I couldn't walk upright, the next moment I was walking normal. One moment my pain level was a 10, the next moment I had no pain. The day before, I had tried to take my kids paddleboarding, and I couldn't even stand up on a paddleboard. I drove back to Portland and paddleboarded across the Columbia River and back. So I knew something had changed.
That is phenomenal. Wow.
But the moment that I let go of the rock was the moment I realized the rock didn't take the pain.
Okay.
The rock just allowed me to let it go. Or the rock is what I allowed, or what I used to give myself permission to heal.
Kind of symbolized, holding the rock was almost like you're holding on to it, and once you released it, it just kind of symbolized the fact that you chose to let it go.
To let it go.
Interesting.
But also in that moment, so many things happened that I didn't even realize in that moment. Like the moment before, I didn't feel I had a purpose anymore. The next moment, I realized my purpose again. The moment before, I looked back and I saw all the things in my life I wanted to change. The next moment, I didn't want to change anything. But also, too, in that moment, I realized that I could now be the example in other people's healing experience because I had just personally experienced it. Like, I'm highly empathic. I spent 40 years taking on everybody's stuff, thinking I was helping them. In that moment, I realized that the way to really help people was to be the example of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Wow, I love
in
that.
that moment, I realized that I could then use my experience, and it was enough that people then could choose to heal instantly.
Interesting. So your pain was coming from everything that you were holding emotionally, mentally, from other people?
Well, I mean, probably emotionally, physically, spiritually, like all of it is, it's pretty all encompassing. But when things start to go the way that we don't want them to go, we sometimes just continue to go that way. Like I've had 7 right knee surgeries, 2 left knee surgeries, a broken ankle, 2 torn quads, a torn hamstring, like all this stuff, right? But I thought all this stuff was a representation of who I was. All that stuff was really outside of who I was, because who I am is a perfected being.
Exactly.
who I was choosing to be was broken. Right? Or
Interesting.
I broke my kneecap my junior year in high school. Sports was my life. I thought my life was over, and I made the poor decision to start drinking, and I couldn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
I was addicted to drugs and alcohol for 10 years. I spent 2 years in prison. Right? I thought that I was never able to change those things that I did.
Mm-hmm.
So even though that I was clean and sober, I still chose to take on everybody else's stuff because I didn't like the way my life had gone.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, I realized my life went exactly the way that it was meant to go. Because without all those experiences, I would not have been in that position to have that experience. And that experience was the greatest moment up to that point.
Wow.
Right?
That's
But
incredible. Yeah. How long
again,
ago was that?
that was 2015, so 8 years.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so is this something that I mean, did it just like come to you, or do you typically like study?
Well, so in about 2011, after my 6th right knee surgery and 1st left knee surgery, I started to realize that it wasn't just sports. Right? Because there's plenty of people that play sports that don't have that many injuries. So I did start to get into like energy and frequency and stuff back then, and found like a correlation between organs and body parts, right? And I even started to make patches for people, performance patches that were just programmed with frequencies. But again, I really wasn't willing to allow it to work for me because I knew all my stories. Like I thought other people were capable of greater experiences, but not me.
Mm-hmm.
I had already actually practiced programming rocks with frequency and muscle testing people to see if it worked. But again, I really wasn't willing to allow healing to work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I thought everybody else was worthy of it, but I didn't think that I was worthy of it. In that moment, when I let go of the rock, was the moment that I realized that everybody is worthy of it. And miracles don't care what you've done. Second chances don't care what you've done.
Right.
Right? I also, in that moment, realized that it's really up to us to choose perfection over everything else.
Interesting. It's like we have that choice all along,
We've
but
always
we're
had it.
holding on to. So what do you think that is? Is it just the ego that just is wanting to hold on to these things to be right about the victim
Well, because it's
story?
hard for us to grasp that we're perfected beings. Like we came here perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had an example that perfected us.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's up to us to choose perfection over everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us have lived our entire lives thinking that we're broken,
Right.
that we need saving eventually.
Right. And I mean, the school system and does a really good job at telling you you're broken and you're not good enough and
Yeah.
stuff. And a lot of times the parents, so it's
Yeah.
easy to take on that idea about ourselves.
Yeah. Or we put perfection into the future.
Okay.
Right? Like, okay, we have the Savior, but the Savior is going to do it when we're no longer here. Not that he's already done it. Now it's up to us to choose perfection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah.
Right? Because
I could align with that.
we don't think we have a choice to be perfect here and now, when perfection is in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or if you want to look at it, let's say, like quantum physics, like reality is both a particle and a wave.
Right.
Right? When there's the last moment and the next moment, but in between those moments is perfection. So the reason that people can heal instantly is because there is that present moment where they already are perfect. Or when I'm helping people heal, I hold that perfection until they realize how perfect they are.
Okay. So is it done through kind of like a meditative state, or
Well,
is it just a change of mind, or?
Well, I would say it's a change of heart.
Okay.
We can't really think ourselves better. We just have to know that we're better. I teach people to get out of their heads and into their hearts, because that's where the perfection is. Or if you said you had a migraine, I know that that is just outside of the present moment. So if I hold the present moment for you, you can then experience perfection. I might have to ask you what you recognize or what you notice now, because you might still think that you have to have a migraine or a headache. I hold the perfection until the other person recognizes that they already are. Right? But I'm not healing people. I'm just showing them they already are.
Interesting. I love that.
So I had a couple experiences right away in the beginning, so that I recognized that I don't need to be doing it. Like I had a woman that had a sty in her eye, and I wanted to help her so bad that the next moment I had it in my eye. Right? But I was still thinking I needed to fix her. Rather quickly, I started to realize that I don't need to fix people. I just need to show people that they already are. Just like we're always the example of possibility for people. I just choose now to be the greatest example. But
I love that.
As much for me as it is for them.
Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, it sounds similar to Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, also, is like just really being present in right here, right now, separate from ailments or the ego or the mind, and just really just getting present. And in that space is where you're kind of connected with all of the universe, and we're all then connected. And is that kind of what you tap into when you're helping someone else kind of like align with that?
Yeah. Like, again, in the beginning, I had an instant healing experience. I then sought validation for an experience that I just had.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
right in the beginning, I started to do things that everybody else thought they needed to do to help people heal. Right? So like in the beginning, I'd go back in time and I would switch stuff when somebody was 3 or 5 or 7 or 9 or 12 or 15, so that the present moment shifted, let's say. But again, I realized rather quickly that it wasn't what I was doing. It was who I was becoming in those moments. When the amplitude in the present moment is greater than the fears of the past, people then shift.
Okay, say that again.
I think I said, when the amplitude in the present moment is greater than the pains of the past, the shift happens. So in the beginning, I was building amplitude by going back and changing the person's perception of the past.
Okay.
Until I was being present enough that they just all of a sudden shifted.
Okay.
But now I realize that it has nothing to do with what I'm doing. It only has to do with what I'm being. When I'm being enough in the present moment, then the person chooses to be more.
Wow, that's powerful. Yeah. I mean, so many people are trying to do it the right way, or they're trying to do something to change something else, and they forget about the whole state of being, of just
Right.
being at cause of something, right? Being yeah, I love that you mentioned that. I think that is truly missing from so much today, of people are stuck in the doing things, and they completely, they're doing without recognizing who they're being, and how
Right.
their being is still affecting something. It's taking them in a different direction, and they can't understand why they're doing all these things, but they're not getting the results that they want. Well, they're being a certain way that gets the results that they don't want.
Right. Well, it's no different. So I had a woman that couldn't eat food. She was 60 years old and she was down to like 3 foods that she could eat.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
I focused on her. I told her, okay. And when I say focus on somebody, I'm really not focusing on them as much as I am just holding that knowing for them.
Okay.
Right? I held perfection, and then I said, okay, now go make something you haven't been able to eat in the past. She made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. She took a bite, and 5 minutes later, she realized her stomach was better. But her stomach had been better for the 5 minutes. The sandwich was like the rock. The sandwich allowed her to know that it was better.
Right. Okay.
Right? But she didn't have to heal her gut, let's say, in order to have that experience. She just had to have that experience. And then moving forward, she got to choose how she wanted to be. Like healing and miracles are just a second chance to be more of who we are.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I love that. That makes so much sense. It's going back to, yeah, God created us in perfection. And all these things, our mind, right, starts telling us we're not good enough, or we need to be a certain way, or we need to whatever we're hearing other people talk around us, and getting back to that perfect in God's image way of being. That's so powerful. So do you focus on physical healing? Do you do like financial,
Well,
healings, or that
everything
kind of stuff?
really, because it's all
Okay.
the same.
Okay.
It's just our perception that tells us that things are different. Now, physical things are sometimes easier to recognize the shift.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you said, okay, my pain level is a 10, okay, I know I just have to show you that it's anything other than a 10. As soon as you recognize that it can be anything other than a 10, it's pretty easy to get it to go away.
Mm-hmm.
So you might say, okay, my pain level's a 10. And I might focus on you and then say, okay, what do you notice now? You might say, oh, it's an 8. And then you might say it's a 6, and then it's a 3, and then it's gone. But it really goes from a 10 to a 0, just like I was saying, the wave and the particle. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
10, and then it's a 0, and then goes back to an 8, because 8 is really all you can grasp in that moment. But once I show somebody that it can be something other than what they say, it's then pretty simple to get it to go all the way away. Like if you say, I can't walk up and down the stairs, all I have to do is show you that you can. So I hold the knowing, and then I'll ask you, okay, go walk up and down the stairs. As soon as you do it, the two stories are so different that you get to pick which one. Most people will choose to continue to walk up and down the stairs, because why wouldn't they?
Right.
Every once in a while, somebody will get to the bottom, sit back down, and then try to tell me that they didn't do it. When the present moment is, when the past is greater than the present moment, that's
Mm-hmm.
what we hold on to. When the present moment is greater than the past, that's the new experience.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? Like I helped a bunch of people that had POTS, which is like a pulmonary disorder where you can't stand up for more than 30 seconds, or else your blood pressure spikes and your heart rate goes to 200. 35 seconds wasn't enough to shift their perspective, because 35 and 30 are close together. As soon as they were standing up for 2 minutes, they never sat back down, because why would they?
Right.
Right?
Wow,
Just
this is
like,
so powerful.
yeah. I had a woman that was in a wheelchair for 11 years that just stood up and walked. She never sat back down. because she didn't think, or her perception in that moment wasn't what she missed out on in the 11 years. Her experience was, I'm moving, I'm up, and why sit back down?
Wow, my mind is blown a little bit. I've studied, I get, the energy, vibration, frequency, the power of healing that we have within our body, the quantum, healing on the cellular level. But, I've never heard it, put it the way that, you are, which is so powerful, because we do have that power within us, and we just, I don't know. I mean, do we just need permission, or is just that,
Well, I think
acknowledgement, or?
we always need permit. Yes, we're always looking for permission. But there's a difference between power and powerful.
Okay.
Power is. Powerful is doing. If we're just being perfected, then everything else after that is perfect.
I love that. That's pretty amazing.
Right? Or it's hard to think ourselves better. We just have to be better. Right? All the energy in the world. Well, that's not, how do I say this? We can do all the energy stuff. But if the perception doesn't shift, it's not enough. Or we can just shift the perspective or the perception, and then the energy just does something new. Just like I had torn labrums in my hips. The energy was then saying that I had torn labrums.
Right.
So instead of energetically, let's say, pushing energy, pulling energy, doing all this stuff to see if we could get the labrums to shift, I just shifted into knowing the labrums were better. And then the energy operated in perfection with that. But we don't have to do all the energy stuff when people are already perfect.
So it's like switching into a knowing, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of a reframing of
Yeah.
the situation, right? Like your identity, like you were saying, you become that, you become your story. But when you reframe it in a way, or that you believe it's different, it has no other option but to be different, because now.
Well, there is a difference between believing and knowing.
Okay.
Believing you're better isn't always enough, because there's so many things that will go against that belief.
Mm-hmm.
When you know that you're better, it's no longer a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Just like if I, let's say, focus knowing on somebody or holding that space for somebody, that let's say their back hurts and then their pain goes away. If they say, well, I'm going to still go to the doctor next week for the doctor to tell me that I'm better, they haven't quite stepped into the knowing. Because as soon as that person knows, they will then cancel the doctor's appointment, because why would you have to go see a doctor if you know something?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's like you break your arm, you don't need to go to the doctor to tell you. You know it's broken because it's like half off. So yeah, interesting.
But
Okay.
also, broken bones can heal instantly as well. But you
Wow.
can't believe it takes 6 weeks to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you've broken a bone before that took six weeks to heal, it might be difficult to step into the new reality of it can be instant. Or we're transitioning probably from a time where cause and effect to being able to cause an effect. Just like if I step off the sidewalk and twist my ankle, cause and effect would say, then I have to then work through a twisted ankle. where cause and effect has nothing to do with the last moment. It only has to do with the present moment. And the present moment, you get to choose whatever reality you want to experience, regardless of if you've stepped off the sidewalk and twisted your ankle. Because there's really only one moment in time. It's no different than if somebody can take one step, they should be able to take 10,000 steps. When we start taking steps, we start thinking, look how far I've gone. And then each step becomes more difficult and more difficult and more difficult. If we could just take one step and let go of it before we took the next step, we could walk forever or run forever.
Mhm. Wow. And I mean, I guess that's how powerful our mind is to keep us sick or keep us broken, and how powerful it is that our being can actually override whatever our mind is trying to tell us.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a matter of silencing kind of the mind or the opinion about it, or
Yeah.
the judgment of it, and
So
choosing something different.
No, so it's hard to do on our own because we know all our stories.
Right.
But again, we're never really doing it on our own because it's already there. It's already present. It's already happened. But when I'm helping people heal, I'm just holding the knowing until they start to know that they're better. But I hold the knowing outside of their thinking. Like I get in my heart and then silently encourage people to get in theirs. Because I know that when people get into their heart, they have heartfelt experiences. And heartfelt experiences are perfect.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's like when someone walks in a room, you can pick up on their mood without them saying anything, and you receive it like subconsciously.
Yeah.
You're aware of their being, and by you holding that space, even if they aren't conscious of it, naturally they're receiving it, or their cells are picking up, their heart is picking up on your heart's vibration, your heart's energy. Wow, that is amazing.
I would say that it's silently encouraging their heart to be more their heart. Because we're not ever really, we're just the example. So if I'm in my heart, that, let's say, heart energy is perfection. But if my heart energy is perfection, then your heart can choose perfection because that example is present. But I'm not really sending that heart energy to you. I'm being that heart energy.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's like if you're a tuning fork and I'm a tuning fork, and I'm 432 and you could be 432, you only have to hit one fork. And then the other one gets to choose if it wants to vibrate or not. Outside of the mind, if I'm 432 and you're 432 and I'm vibrating, you would just vibrate.
Gotcha. Wow. So are you able to just like walk in a room and hold that space, and people feel different from it?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But again, it's choice. You're not healing people. You're allowing people to choose perfection over other things. Just like if there's a room of negative people, it doesn't do any good to walk into the room and protect yourself from the negativity. Because then there's just 11 negative people in the room.
Okay.
Perfection doesn't need protection. right? Because perfection just is,
It just is. Mm-hmm.
right? So you have to walk into the room knowing that your perfection can influence change,
Mm-hmm.
but then not worry about what everybody else is choosing to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because as soon as you start to worry about it, then you become what they are being, not who you are.
Right, right.
If
Yeah,
you
'cause your attention now is on that and protecting yourself versus knowing that everything's perfect. Mhm.
and just because that, let's say, and I'm using this loosely, like the negative people, they might not all choose to change in that moment.
Mhm.
But there's times people would message me 30 days later and say something like, "You're not going to believe this. I'm all of a sudden better." It's no different than a prayer. If you say a prayer for somebody, you have to know that it's going to work.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then not worrying about when it works.
Mhm.
Because the moment you start to worry if the prayer was effective is the moment that it's no longer effective,
Mhm.
right? But it's held in time and space forever
Mhm.
until like we bring it back
Mhm.
or we discount it, right? But that's why I like to interact with people when I'm helping them, because then I can point it out to them
Mhm.
so that they recognize it and know that it's different,
Mhm.
right? The sooner they know it, the easier it becomes,
Right. Okay.
right? Just like if you said I had a migraine and I focused on you, I might have to then ask you, what do you notice now? Because if you're so stuck in having a migraine, you might not even realize that it's no longer there. If the amplitude was enough, I wouldn't even have to ask you, because you would just all of a sudden say, "Oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this. I don't have a migraine."
Mhm.
And that does happen sometimes. Like I'll be on the phone having a conversation with someone and they'll say, "You're not going to believe this. That shoulder pain I was going to say something about is all of a sudden gone."
Mhm. Wow. So it's directing the awareness, right? I mean, is that
Well, it's
kind of what you're
directing
saying?
the
Or
awareness back to perfection
yeah.
instead of the awareness is on what's wrong
Right.
or what's broken.
Right. So you said choice, right? So they have to choose this. Is that's a conscious decision that they make? So they then give
Well,
they
it
say,
could be conscious, subconscious. I mean, it's just there's
okay.
either we never have a choice or we always have a choice.
Mhm.
I would say we always have a choice.
Mhm.
Sometimes when we've chose something, we surrender to that choice and then just assume that's how it's always going to be. And then consciously, we no longer even think about it because we don't think we then have a choice. Just like somebody that has migraines every morning when they wake up doesn't think they have a choice, and they've surrendered all their power to the migraines. And then
Mhm.
every morning, it just becomes a thing,
Mhm.
right? Once you show somebody that they have a choice, it becomes that much easier to know you have a choice.
Mhm. So would it work? How would it work, or how would it apply? Let's say someone that got like a snake bite, or they have physical poison in their body. Is it a way to protect maybe from that poison um going throughout your body and harming you further, or how would you apply that,
Well,
like
when
a poison
somebody's
or
right
something?
in the middle of trauma, let's say, it is sometimes hard to shift their perspective.
Okay.
If somebody's bit by a rattlesnake and they're so fearful of, let's say, dying, it might be hard to provide the space for them to overcome it.
Hmm. Gotcha.
But there's really only one thing: love. Everything else is a lack of love.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like the way you put that.
the darkness is light that's forgotten it is love.
Mm.
It no longer thinks it has a choice to be light. When really, when it is loved, it will choose then to become light. Because that's really what it is. Just like a cancer cell is a cell that is forgotten that is part of the whole. It's forgotten that it is loved. It thinks that the only way to survive is to be cancerous. When if you love it, it will choose to come back. But the love has to be greater than the fear.
Right. Okay.
Because just like people, the cancer cell thinks that the only way that it can survive is to be cancerous.
That's its state of being. The cancer is like,
Right.
Okay. Interesting.
But again, the cell is afraid of dying. And so to survive, it becomes cancerous. There was an interesting study of a woman in 1986 that had multiple personalities. She only had cancer in one personality. So as soon as her personality shifted, they could MRI her and it was no longer there.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yes, but it takes a 100% shift in perspective.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's amazing. I mean, Wayne Dyer says, change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, right? There's so much evidence to what you're saying. It's amazing. I haven't heard it put the way that you have, kind of in that perspective. And it makes sense to me because I've seen these kind of things happen before too, when it's really just a change of perspective. It's almost like an identity change. You now identify as perfect and whole and complete versus, oh well, we're all human, we all are broken, we all, that's your identity versus another possibility.
Yeah,
that's incredible. I mean, gosh, I wish they need to teach us this in school.
well,
in elementary school.
Really, if from the time we were kids, we were told that we were perfected beings, not imperfect beings, it would be much different now. Healing should be really simple because it's just a return to ourselves.
So would you say it's like I was talking to a lady the other day, and she helps people heal physically through the power of forgiveness. So is there a sense of that, I guess with forgiveness, it's letting go, right? It's like I no longer have that anger or judgment on something, and maybe, forgiving the past or and the reason why I'm bringing that up is I'm relating it like to scripture, to biblical scripture. Whenever Jesus healed somebody, I mean, it was instantly, and he would always tell them they were forgiven, their sins were forgiven, and instantly there was like a letting go, like a permission, instead of holding that negative energy, it's now you're forgiven, and it's kind of it's instantly let go.
Yes, we're always forgiven. It's already happened.
Yeah.
Again, it's up to us to choose forgiveness over everything else.
Right.
So the woman that had enough faith to touch Christ's robe, she had a physical experience. Okay? But when he turned around, she still kneeled down because she didn't think she was worthy of the experience that she just had. But what did he say? Just don't go do it again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? That's really all that matters.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, because then gosh, our mind is just so powerful because we're judging ourselves, we're feeling guilty and shame and all these things, and then we're carrying that versus being forgiven or just letting it go, having a different identity. I mean,
Yeah.
which, brings even more power to, taking on Christ's identity, that perfection, that, walking on water. I mean, identifying as, you know, a being of power, being in that space of love. Wow. So, wow, that's incredible. I'm so excited about this conversation. The world needs to hear this. So do you work with clients on a one-on-one basis, or how do
I
you?
work with clients one-on-one, and I also teach in groups.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Do you have like an ideal client? Do you just work with anybody that needs healing?
So on the healing side of things, I work with anybody that is wanting to have a healing experience.
Mm-hmm.
But also on the teaching side, I also teach people how to do exactly what I do and how to be the example in other people's healing experience.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
And
Okay.
when I'm helping people heal, I'm actually healing myself,
Mm-hmm. Of
right? Because the
course.
presence that it takes to help somebody else is the presence that it takes to help ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sometimes easier for me to get out of my own way to help you, let's say, than it is to sit around and try and help myself by myself.
Right. Oh yeah, no,
Again,
totally makes sense.
because I know all my stories.
Right. 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 And then you get to shift into a healing. So
Yeah.
naturally you're experiencing that healing for yourself, being that example for them to
Yeah.
heal themselves as well. Awesome. That's incredible.
It is.
So
It
does
is.
this run in your family? Did you just like
Well, it doesn't necessarily run in my family, but all my life, like I said, all my life experiences put me in a position to have that experience.
Mhm, mhm,
Right. My purpose would probably then be is for me to just continue to share that experience so other people can have similar experiences.
right.
And people don't have to, let's say, experience all the hardship and pain that I experienced in order to utilize my experience to help themselves.
Mhm,
But like I've experienced it all, so people don't have to.
mhm,
Just like Christ sacrificed for all of it, so we wouldn't have to.
mhm, mhm,
He sacrificed on a level that would be hard for us to even grasp. But
mhm,
me personally, I've had enough heartache and pain in my life to know that I no longer want people to experience it.
mhm,
Like in the beginning, I might wanted to have felt your pain in order to have helped you with your pain.
mhm,
Now I know I don't need to feel your pain to help you. I just have to know that I can help you.
mhm,
And it's not really your pain, it's just pain. And since I already know
mhm,
what pain feels like, I don't need to feel it anymore. I
mhm,
just choose to hold the knowing until the other person chooses the greater experience.
mhm.
It's way, it's
Wow.
way, it's so much more simple than what we allow it to be. Healing has become so complicated, whether it's Western or Eastern or energy or all that. It's really simple.
Mhm,
It's just stepping out of everything that has happened in order to have a greater experience. And then know when you're having those great experiences.
mhm. That's amazing. That is truly amazing. And yeah, it is much more simple than we make it out. I mean, you could just shift, I mean, life's change in an instant. Sometimes you can get in a horrible car accident, and in an instant your life is forever changed. In the same way, I've said this before, that you can be healed in that sense too. And but I love the way that you're putting it, because it's people, I think, need to process it consciously, and so you're trying to dissect it and make sense of it to do it the right way. And that's the whole problem, trying to do it a certain way versus just being.
And I would even say, because I think you said people can be healed, I would say that people are healed.
Are healed. Mm-hmm.
Now it's up to us to experience that healing over everything else.
Mm-hmm. Over everything else. So it bigger than the fear, bigger than
Bigger
everything
than the
else.
fear, bigger than the pain, bigger than the shame, bigger than the guilt.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's incredible. So do you work with children as well, or is it more
I have,
adults?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, children sometimes switch really quickly. I sometimes will work with the parents at the same time, because the parents will sometimes project the
Right.
past experience.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When I work with parents, I tell them, okay, you need to hold the knowing with me, so that then your child knows that they're better.
Mm-hmm.
Because children are pretty good at picking up on their parents.
Mm-hmm. Oh
Right?
yeah.
If the parents are afraid, if the parents feel shame or guilt or whatever that emotion is, then it's harder to hold that space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, that's
But
that's powerful. I mean, the world as it is right now today, I was speaking with someone earlier, and we were talking about how you're seeing a lot of like light workers and people that are coming um up and out right now in a time when the world is kind of crumbling in a sense, and they need to hear these messages. They need to know that they're healed already, that they are love, that they do hold perfection, and they just need to know it.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, wow, your work is so powerful. I absolutely want to support you in any way that I can with coming and bringing this out and forward. Are you working on a book yet? Do you have any books?
Well, it's funny. I wrote a book in 2007 about my addiction,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't wrote a book about this yet. It is on my list of things to do.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely want to encourage you to do that. I feel like I this message that you have right now, I mean, it's an understatement to just say that the world needs it right now. I mean, we need
Yeah.
a shift, a huge major shift. And I guess it starts with us, right? Like with you, and you holding that space with me in that space of not seeing it as broken, but seeing it as perfect and healed, and holding that space, right?
Yeah.
And giving love, encouraging,
Being love.
being love. Mm-hmm. Being.
And I do feel it's more of a being. Like, I'm not sending healing to people. I'm being healed in that moment. I'm not sending energy to people. I'm being energy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's a difference. I'm not sending prayers. I'm being the prayer.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I'm blown away with really what you've been able to do. And even just so, if someone is, because as simple as it is a little hard to make that shift, because that muscle is been exercised for so long, of the shame and the guilt and the negativity and all that stuff. So is it powerful to, like, you had a rock in hand? Is it powerful would you say for someone that wants to make a shift to have some sort of symbolic letting go of? I mean, so
Well,
you said you gave the rock all the stuff, right? Was that like a process that you're holding this rock and you're kind of like, I give you
well,
my addictions and
I already knew that I could program rocks with energy. My
okay.
perception in the time at that moment was it was energetic, let's say. But the moment I let go of the rock was the moment I realized the rock didn't take it.
Okay.
Right. So people don't need a rock when the rock is always present.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes easier when somebody else is in their experience with them because somebody then is holding on to the knowing.
Mm-hmm.
But if they could do it on their own, let's say, they would have already. But the moment you pointed out to them that they've already done it is the moment they realize that they're capable of overcoming all of it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. It's almost like an awakening of
Yeah.
the true self that's just been asleep or hidden, and you kind of give it permission to be
Yeah.
its a true healed self, full of love.
Yeah. And part of the transition was in the beginning, I thought I was healing people. But I found that if I wanted to help one person, you might be able to do it that way. But if you want to help 10 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people, you can't look at people as broken and needing to be fixed. You can't point out all the reasons why. You just have to be the example that they're capable of overcoming it.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment I realized that it wasn't what I was doing as much as it was what I was being, then that's when I stopped having to fix people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, fixing people and that mentality is exhausting and it's
It is,
scary
it
and it's like too much pressure versus,
just creates more sickness. When
yes.
you empower people to be health, then there is health present.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Oh, that is so cool. Um, Anybody that is watching, if they want more information, or how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so they can find me on Facebook. It's pretty easy to send me a messenger or a message on Messenger on Facebook. Or my website is my name, Mikael D as in David Luman, Luman.
Okay. Awesome. Well, when I upload this video on YouTube, I'll put the links at the bottom there. That way, I'm so fascinated. I feel like I kind of want to pick your brain all day about this. There's so many different scenarios, and it just really completely makes sense to me as far as the state of being who you're being. I mean, because that is your true self. And, I mean, we're made in the image of God. I mean, doesn't necessarily mean that God has 5 fingers and 5 toes and, 2 eyes and 1 nose, but it's a being, his state of being. And we have that available to us. Wow, to be able to be healed, be forgiven, be healed, be love.
Yeah.
And we have this idea or world or words in our mind that wants to counter that and tell us that we're not enough, or you can't heal, your arm's broken. I mean, look at it, and you identify versus.
Yeah. Well, that's why I always thought, just get out of your head and into your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And then recognize the difference.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And that's one that I definitely, I'm very analytical. I process everything. I want to think of, understand. And I used to think that was like a great thing about me, that I love to analyze and I love to dissect and I love knowledge. And I recently have come to understand that that's not the best of me. It is in my heart. When I am coming from my heart, I am magical. And then when I'm trying to like redo what I just like experienced or said, or the way I was being, and I'm trying to like put it on paper and redo it, it is not quite the same, because now I'm in my head and Yeah, definitely need to, I don't know, is practice the right word, but really coming more from my heart than my head.
Yeah. It's just like, if I do an event and I share my story, let's say there's 50 people. If I'm speaking from my heart, people hear exactly what they need to hear.
Mhm.
If I ask all the 50 people afterwards what I said, they will all say I said something different.
Mhm.
If I'm thinking about what I need to say, I rarely say the right thing. Or I shouldn't say that. It doesn't always touch everybody.
Mhm. Okay.
If I'm speaking from the heart, everybody gets touched,
Right.
because then everybody hears what they need to hear.
Right. I love that. And I have experienced that. I've experienced both where I'm trying to say things the right way. I'm trying to do it because I want to touch everyone once. I'm consciously doing it. And it it doesn't it doesn't land in the way that when I'm just being open, it's magical. It's
Yeah.
magical. And they do receive whatever they are supposed to receive from it. And it's perfect. It's like God through me versus just,
Yeah.
My identity showing up to the
Yeah.
table. So, wow, I love that. That's wonderful. I'm like, I feel like I could geek out on this. And you got really, I'm just
Yeah.
processing everything. And I think it's like, it's completely amazing. And that's something I feel like, I probably am going to go for a walk in nature in just a little bit and just and
Yeah.
align with my being,
Yeah.
try to not consciously kind of judge or analyze, but just really be in my being. Because, I would love to take that on more. I think that's so powerful. And I know I'm saying take it on more. I just be it.
Yeah.
So kind of aligning with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any last words that you'd like to part with, or
No, I mean, I think that's pretty good. I mean, the easiest, thing is for people just to be present,
Mhm.
right? Once we stop thinking, we're being present.
Mhm. Just experience what's happening around you, right? Just be present.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's like we should live life meditated. Like
Mhm.
that should be our natural state of being,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Because our being is in between the moments in time.
I love that. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. Well, awesome. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody watching, I hope you've been touched and moved and really seeing the possibility for you in healing, in being present in life, and what's available for you in this exact moment is being loved, being healed, being exactly who you are, and nothing um added on top of that. You don't need the sprinkles. You are exactly perfect, right? Like know that you are love, and you are a miracle. And um regardless of your past or your history or flaws or anything, those are just things, and they are not who you are. You are love, you are healed, you are perfect right here, right now.
Yeah.
And Michael, I want to thank you for your time and sitting here and geeking out on this with me. I look forward to. I want to encourage you to get a book out there and get that message and people understanding. There's so many people. I mean, suicide is up 300%. There are people that are just really drowning in addictions and just this identity of not being enough. And if there's some way that I can help, support this movement of coming back to who you are and shedding all that junk that isn't you, um, and just loving on people that need to be reminded that they are loved. So loving on them, but being love um, in myself, I know is power.
Yeah.
So Yeah, so thank you so much, everybody watching. Please get a hold of Michael. You reach out to me. I'll send you his way, or just directly reach out to him. Under the video, there'll be his links. And with that, we'll go ahead and end the call. And thank you so much. I just go out there and be love. So that
Awesome.
have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.